Okay, morning, afternoon to everybody. Thanks for getting together, guys. So today we're speaking with Dumebi Okwechime.
Very good.
Okay, and we also have Sebastian and Emmanuel, one of our co-founders, on the call. So Dumebi, do you want to start with your intro?
Absolutely. So my name is Dumebi Okwechime. My background is I have a PhD in computer vision. So that's machine learning, but for videos and images. And have a quite extensive career in machine learning, spanning from working from on a big data warehousing company to working for consultancies or financial services. Eventually, I was head of data science in Barclaycard, UK, and now I'm chief decision scientist at Ren Money.
That is
Cool.
quite a resume.
Thank you.
So what brought you back to Nigeria out of curiosity?
So quite a few things, but the main one is just I realized that machine learning had a greater impact in emerging markets. The thing about developed nations is that although machine learning can have an impact there, everything more or less works, right? And then having to try to introduce the values of machine learning just wasn't as impactful as you can imagine would be in developed nations where many things don't work very well. So machine learning is more or less leapfrogging over certain infrastructure, certain policies, certain requirements that have taken years for developed nations to develop, and actually can get us to a point where we can actually still be able to offer people credit, able to make decisions with information that doesn't follow the traditional route. So it just felt like the natural thing to do. And obviously, being Nigerian, it was the easiest decision to make.
And I mean, when it comes to before you even got into the data science field, how did you I mean, what was your journey before that? What were you busy with before that? What was your undergrad? What was high school like?
Yeah. So I started my first degree was in electronic engineering, and it was great because it had a sort of a diverse curriculum. Some bit of hardware, electronics, some bit software, sort of computer science. And to be candid, I started gravitating towards computer science because a lot of the modules had coursework, and I really like coursework. That's when they make you develop code. That's when they make you, do projects. And what I really liked about those is that they had some heavy marks. So some of these modules had like 30%, 40% of the total marks. So I was like, you know what? If I nail the coursework, if I get 100% of the coursework, I just sail into the exam feeling quite comfortable. And so that kind of got me gravitating towards computer science topics, right? Electronics, though, you have to go in there, get everything right on day one. Whereas computer science subjects, you can actually do some projects. And I really enjoyed the projects. I was actually really doing very well at them, coding in Java, in Python. And so, but in my final year, you had to pick a final year project. And I went around different academics, eventually landed on a gentleman called Richard Bowden, who was a professor, or at the time an academic for computer vision, or computer vision in general, but for computer science in my view at the time. And the topic he had was really interesting. So I did that with him. I think I got the highest mark in the year that year for it. And then he was like, "Hey, you want to do a PhD?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." But because I was on a 4-year program, so I had to do a master's year as well. He's like, "Do you know what? Do the master's year. That gives me 1 year to kind of collect the funding I need to get you a full PhD." So did the master's year. Admittedly, I had to also do very well that year too. And then the next year, I did a PhD with him.
Okay. Wow, what a journey! Pretty active student.
Thank you. It was good fun. I mean, it just, it felt like that's where the world was heading at the time, right? I just wanted to add though, I also did it was like a 5-year program, and halfway through, you kind of can spend 1 full year working in academia. And I think that kind of made a big difference because I went into industry. So I went into industry. I was working for Siemens in Germany. And that was really a really true electronics company, right? And I got that 1 year to understand what it felt like working in the company like that. And when I came out of that program, went into the final year, I had a better idea what I wanted to do as a career. I knew how to do with development. I knew how to do with new technology. And I also knew that having a real higher education really could help you leverage a lot of that in industry. So that actually got me really interested in doing sort of the master's and the PhD. So, having that experience in industry for a year really helped me in that process.
And also, I mean, given your journey and given the many sort of like the exposure that you've had with the companies and the firms, and also the institutions that you studied at, do you think that would have been possible or is possible in Africa today, in Nigeria today?
To be upfront, I don't think so, because well, first of all, they're not, the education system has to be really sharp, right? It means you have to get through, it's a 5-year program, and even having a stop or a pause can really ruin the momentum. Preparing for exams, understanding the subjects, really getting deep into the program, having breaks in between, like I know generally happens in Nigeria, can make it very difficult to really get through that very quickly. Also, to be, computer vision, machine learning, those kind of subjects, I even still quite new in developed nations. In the UK, only recently am I seeing graduates coming out of uni, with first degrees in data science. It's still fairly new. And those things haven't really quite yet translated to a lot of nations like Nigeria. So it's going to take a while to get the academics in place, getting the equipment, the experience, the infrastructure in place to get these universities prepared to bring students into that world. But I do know that there are a lot of programs you can do online that can kind of get you upskilled. And I think those are great because it leverages some form of base experience and allows you to then develop into sort of more data science role, which is great. But I think they do lack that one-to-one, having a teacher in front of you, teaching you these things, having a classroom of cohorts, helping you learn as you're learning with them, going through that 2-3 year experience, and then using that in industry. There's a development process that a 6 weeks course can't really give you. So also, so that's there and it's great to leverage, but it doesn't really give you that full experience one would get. But the good news, though, in my view, is that particularly from my days, right back then, there weren't the Python packages, there weren't the the TensorFlow. It was pretty much just C and MATLAB, and there's still obviously Python, Java. They didn't have any of the machine learning libraries, so you had to understand the maths, you had to code the maths. So it's a lot more academic than it is now. So now you just, with some basic understanding, you can actually learn how to use these libraries and how to use these functions and still apply them. So quite possibly the necessity to have such an in-depth experience, academic experience, it's not so necessary. But what is missing, though, is that application into industry and being able to leverage that into full-time employment.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. What I'm taking away from that is that you don't need the in-depth academic background. You can
not at all. And it's great. It's so painful to be honest with you, thinking like, wow, I just need to put in one line of code and I get everything I need, as opposed to the math library I need to download, the math I need to get working, the equations I need to get right. It's so painful to watch, but at the same time, though, it's endearing because it means the industry has moved very far. And it means that it's become a lot more mainstream and more people can use it and apply it. So it's actually better because the ecosystem has grown as a result of that easy access to the information and technology.
Cool. So you're a pioneer. So thank you for sort of like opening.
I probably contributed. I'm just trying to make a gap in my hand of how much I contributed to that.
So given the change in what is required from a data science perspective, how are you finding building a team in Nigeria currently? Is it easier finding talent? Is it a bit trickier? What's the process currently?
Yeah, so it's quite challenging. So I have been in situations where I've been trying to recruit a team, and obviously being in the industry, you want to recruit very quickly. I've had a few strategies that some of them have not worked as well as others. One, for instance, was to provide a test, come into the office, do a test, and give me the results I check. That didn't quite work well because I realized there's certain soft skills and skills that I wasn't seeing it, because if you don't pass that test, you don't get the interview. So I thought, you know what, scrap the test. Let's do an interview first and then do a test at home. That way, you have enough time to do the test. But what I kept seeing quite often were either very talented individuals that maybe started off in a different industry like chemical engineering, but then wanted to move into data science, and using these Coursera, Udemy courses to get in, they had sort of the conceptual knowledge of some of these packages, these tools, these methods, but couldn't go deeper into understanding how they work. And the reason why that's so important is because until you understand that, then you don't know how to apply it properly in a problem. You know, trying everything is not really the best way to explore solutions and get into a final destination, right? So you still need someone to really be able to understand why, you know, not treat everything as a black box, but rather understand why their methods are chosen, why they're working better than others, and things like that. So either you get people who haven't had the real academic experience, or you get some who've had, you know, who've done these courses, have a bit of experience in industry, but then you dig a bit deeper, you found out that it was mostly analytical work. They didn't really do the core data science, so meaning they don't have a lot of industry experience. So it was quite rare to find someone that's had the industry experience, has enough of the self-training or academic training to really hold their own in some of these interview situations. So it just meant that you have to, you know, look between the lines. If the test don't come back very successful, give them another try. I actually hired a candidate who came in with his test. It wasn't that great, but I could tell because he had a good maths background. He was a good mathematician. The interview was actually quite strong. I said, you know, do the test again, see if you can improve this by a certain percentage. And he did. He came in and he's doing very well. So you can't really hold the same level of interview standards. You have to see between the lines to make sure the person can pick things up quickly, has some of the base knowledge, and hope that they can pick up the rest from working with you. But it does mean, though, that the first few months of being on the job, you really have to support that person and get them into that standard that you need for that role.
And what have you learned from mentoring people coming to your team for the first time? Like, what are you learning just in general?
Yeah, so from the, you know, decision science perspective, there's some misunderstanding of how the job is, the experience of the work. You know, data science is so vast. I mean, you can apply it in many places with many techniques, with many outcomes. And I think there's definitely a very romantic view of the role. You know, it's great. You come in, these are interesting problems, and you get to create some applications that do some cool things. You know, like the Google or the Amazon or the Apple of the world. But really, it's not that way in industry. It's actually a lot more grueling, a lot more painstaking, a lot more repetitive, and not as varied as you might get. So it's just about really. So what I've noticed as candidates, I'll be like, well, I want to also try some more cool things. But what does that mean? You mean, you know, it's not computer vision, this is financial services. You know what I mean? So it's all about how to make them aware that there's a process. I think the lack of understanding of the process is what I've noticed, where you have to work on the data very hard. Most of the time, clean that data, prepare that data, make sure it's ready. Then after the data is ready, there's some heavy feature engineering, which can require a lot of repetition, a lot of trial and error, a lot of false starts. And then you then look into your data exploration, and then you get some outputs that you can actually use. And that process, the romantic elements is only maybe a small fraction of that whole process, but that whole process is the job. So just really kind of getting people into that. And to be fair, as long as you get that understanding in early, that does help a lot. I think it's quite unfortunate when, you know, you're not making that clear, particularly for those who've not worked in a data science or decision science job before. So that's that's also a learning for me as well, to be upfront, because with some of the candidates that come through, I've been realizing and noticing that, and trying to find ways to structure that understanding quite early in the process.
So, Dumebi, so we know that we came in contact with you through our venture, the Gradient Boost. And as you know, we have a boot camp in which we're trying to prepare people to be the people who come through the doors, like, you know, the people you've seen, but to actually impress.
Yeah.
So spoken about, you know, how change from, you know, the academia perspective to now not needing all of that. So, you know, for a student who's going through a boot camp, what would you expect them to have covered in terms of even the soft skills, or even the kind of approach taken in that boot camp to best prepare them for success?
Yeah, very good question. So a boot camp would, I think, in my view, would be a step ahead of what you get from sort of a Coursera or Udemy, right? Where you're at home, you're self-taught, and you kind of go through this course. But I think what would be great about boot camp is getting that education, right, and that awareness of the topics. The soft skills, I can't stress enough how important that is, because being able to understand the process, understand the roles, understand what's required of you, and from my understanding of what Gradient Boost also offers is the opportunity for mentorship, right? Actually knowing someone who's been on the job, knowing someone who's done the job, and someone that can give you that guidance and support. Because without that, even just being able to isolate the technical skills and ignoring the rest, you haven't got everything you need. You need to be able to hold your own interviews. You need to be able to understand that the job requires these steps and these processes in this journey. You understand there's a development process to the job in itself, and sort of get over or past that of lack of awareness or the romantic element of data science, and really understand how it can be applied in industry today. And that's kind of, so that's what that's what would be great, having a kind of that kind of has that full view, and also being able to have a relationship with someone who's actually done the job before and understands how the process works.
That's fair. So I kind of want to transition to talk about what you're doing at Ren Money.
Sure.
So you came to Nigeria. You had to get get a team going quickly. How's that been?
Yeah, there's been challenging. There's been some easy and some hard periods. So before I joined, I had the opportunity to interview the candidates from the UK. So I didn't actually meet them. So it was great. I think the first batch I came through had the soft skills. What I wasn't looking for was an already rounded candidate, but someone who's either has enough awareness of the topic, depth. I was able to dig a bit deeper into why methodologies work the way they do, and more or less hold their own with some of the basic questions. And that's kind of what I wanted, sort of someone with a certain level of exposure that we can then build up and develop. And when I got in, we then had to get the other elements we needed in the team. So we needed someone who helped us with data engineering, because it just took too long to export data and took too long to clean data. We had to get someone with business intelligence knowledge, someone understand the business very well, to help us with some certain level of SME understanding, some level of understanding what the data is saying as well. And so when we had those pieces in place, we became a lot more prepared. I think where I also struggled was when I started to add more members to the team. I think that became harder, because now you have a batch of team members who are fairly experienced now, 6 to 12 months on the job. But now you need to try to strengthen that quality as well, so that those team members are not struggling so hard to help upskill the rest. And that became very difficult, trying to tier up those levels of skills and experience. I struggled with that in particular. So it meant I had to go to sort of straight out of the uni, so some with a very impressive mathematics background, or some really big ambitions for data science, decision science, and try to then upskill them. But it became very difficult to tear out the team from certain levels. Yeah, so that was quite hard. But as I mentioned before, we kind of started to try and error some recruitment techniques, recruitment methods, and I think we got to a point where I realized that as long as we bring in certain level of experience and certain soft skills and abilities they already have, then we can upskill them in the role. But you can't do that forever. There has to be a point where you try to find a bit more of a tiered level and you get that across in the team.
That's interesting. And what would you say is the most promising aspect about the pipeline for your company and for the industry in terms of talent?
What do you mean?
In terms of what's most promising? What's the signals that the industry is giving you in terms of?
Oh, right. So the great thing is there's a lot of demand, as in there's a lot of aspiring youths in Nigeria that have been doing the right things, definitely. They've been doing Udemy courses, Coursera courses. They've been trying to find Kaggle competitions, online competitions, Zindi competitions that they can get involved in, demonstrate some level of competencies. I know there's other groups as well, like Data Science Nigeria, they get involved in those. So I've seen a lot of youth doing everything they can to get themselves a level and quality and skills to get these jobs. Some of them are just not there yet, but it's just so heartfelt and encouraging to see that a lot of them are trying, and I've done actually, given the limited exposure and resource they have done actually quite well. So it's just a case of finding ways to kind of bring, and I always, after interviews, I'm always really honest about feedback. I'm like, great CV, great experience. These questions, you need to get, I give feedback like you need to get into the data a bit more, need to get into math a bit more, maybe exposure to this and that could help. And the feedback is usually very well received because a lot of them know that they haven't got the experience to really demonstrate the best qualities they have for these interviews. But my expectation, though, is with time, you find a lot of these candidates are getting the exposure and experience that to hold their own in these interviews. So yeah, it's encouraging. So it's it's quite early stages in Nigeria for the data science community, but it's done a lot in the short space of time.
I really like the part about the feedback, because you don't want people to be disheartened after going through such an intensive process. And they don't come back, and then you lose talent essentially slowly. Start setting in. So I really like that. Great. Thanks.
Yeah, completely. It's very important to give feedback, and and they're very honest as well. When I find when I'm asking questions, they say, yeah, I don't know, I've not done that before, and then they start talking about why and what things they can do to find ways to know and learn these things a lot more quickly. And I find that's more beneficial for them. Yeah, because obviously they do have the heart and do have the ambition. It's just a case of the time and the exposure that's missing.
Okay, I have a question about what Ren Money actually does. So
yeah,
especially in terms of how you use this data is what I want to know. So I know you offer loans within 24 hours. So that verification process.
Yeah.
Give us all the answers. Tell us the secret sauce. Give us it.
I can't quite give the secret sauce, but
it was worth a try.
But the pipeline is like pretty much any other microfinance bank with the data science influence and the digital influence as well. So the onboarding process is like many other. You ask a lot of onboarding questions, and it gets to the point of the onboarding process where enough questions have been asked and answered that we use those answers and responses, as well as third-party data sets that we collect, credit bureaus, other vendors. We combine them into our decision engine that comes back with a yes or no. So there's sort of an initial credit decision, so to speak. After that, the customer gets a yes. They then go through a semi-automated KYC process. Why semi-automated? Because if the customer comes back and there's something missing, then it has to be taken to an agent who then can contact the customers and try to work out why this doesn't line up, why we don't know this. Otherwise, if the KYC comes through, and the customer gets a yes, and then that leads into the customer signing off a letter and a loan disbursed. So really the magic happens from the onboarding process of getting all that information from the customer and getting as much third-party information as we can on the customer to make a decision on their creditworthiness, which can include not just whether or not they can afford the loan, they're creditworthy for the loan, but how much they can actually afford. But there's so much in that already, and there's so much Ren Money is working on to improve. And from being able to just give you a decision just based on the quickest and the shortest route to being able to even assess your affordability if you are not plugged into the normal third-party channels like credit bureau. There's a lot of customers we see that don't have credit bureau data. It's very telling of their creditworthiness as well. So yeah, that's the process, and it has a long way to go. I mean, we don't like to think that we've gotten where we want to be, but we've been working very hard on that.
So on that note, what impact do you see data science is having on the fintech landscape in the continent, particularly around supporting underbanked in the continent? What impact is data science having as a whole?
Oh, brilliant. So we started to take on really more riskier products, more riskier customers. And by riskier customers, meaning customers that don't have a lot of data footprint. In particular, we really passionate about self-employed customers. I mean, the Nigerian economy is driven by self-employed individuals. And these individuals generally cannot get access to credit from the normal channels like banks because there is no way to determine income, determine affordability, to leverage anything that a self-employed individual has. So that's one of the products that we're particularly proud of, being able to assess a customer who does not have a lot of information to derive a lot of this requirements for credit assessment and for affordability assessment. But we do that. One of the few that offers self-employed individuals loans. So that's one of them. We also obviously support the employed particularly. And we try to make our process and our product very convenient. So if you are already with a bank, or you're already with other financial services, come to Renmoney, you get a loan as quickly as possible with as little need for interaction. There's no need to visit a bank branch. There's no need to send us documentation. You can get a loan fairly conveniently without the need of going through the normal channels you would do with a major bank. Obviously, even individuals who get turned down by banks, we're obviously willing to take them on board. And even individuals we do turn down from loans, they have opportunity to come back after a period of time, and we put them through the same process. So obviously, with a period of time, they may have improved their income flow, they may have reduced their expenses, they may have covered some of the debt they have in the credit bureau report. So there's always an opportunity for them to come back and apply for loans. So yeah.
That sounds very life-changing. Has the COVID pandemic had any impacts on people's ability to repay loans of late? What are you seeing like happening?
Yeah, definitely. So with the pandemic, it's been difficult. People losing their jobs, people having salary cuts, self-employed who are not able to do their business. So that's been quite challenging to some of our customers. What we've done is we've set up restructured loans. So customers can get a payment holiday. Certain customers can restructure loans so they make smaller payments over a longer period. So that way, we've been able to help those customers who are really struggling with an opportunity to get back on their feet over a period of time. So that's kind of how we've helped them out. And also, there's some customers with more unique needs. So we do help unique customers on a case-by-case basis, right? Because some customers have, particularly large loans. And even with the restructuring process, it's quite difficult for them. So we do even stretch how much we can give a customer as far as an extension or smaller payments. So we do everything we can to get our customers back on their feet. So we've been doing that since April. And a lot of customers have been very responsive to that restructured product. And a lot of them are taking them on, and it's helping them get themselves back on their feet.
Interesting. And then when it comes to post the current pandemic and situation, what do you think the opportunities are beyond, not only with regards to providing people with access to liquidity, but in every regard, specifically in your industry and in your work? What are the opportunities?
What do you mean opportunities?
And in terms of leveraging the information that you have, new business models.
So I mean, off the top of my head, I mean, I can imagine us. So when things get back to normal to a certain degree, we always look at new products that we can offer customers, right? Things that could help them afford loans more, things that could help them cover their risk, particularly if they lose their jobs. So we're always exploring those things. I can see us being in a position to restructure loans and offer maybe sort of more longer-term loans. Restructure loans, offer smaller payments. Beyond that, though, I can't imagine what more we can really do for customers. We do try to offer to as many customers within our demographics, so customers who are generally high risk. And what we try to do is get customers onto the ladder. So we, up to a point, had a product that we call the Credit Builder product, which we took out leading into this pandemic because we had to just focus more on on existing customers, making sure they're okay. But the product was designed to help customers get into the process of being able to get credit, demonstrate with a short period of time, with a very small amounts of money, that they can actually uphold their credit, and then start to build a habit of repayment that can lead them into larger loans for longer tenors. So things like that. So we're always quite experimental with some of these things. Most companies always pushing and trying things out. So as soon as things sort of clear up, and we have the opportunity to find opportunity to take more risk, then we will do that.
Awesome. Yeah, I was really interested and keen to know also what are the coolest things that you guys are working on, the coolest problems that you're solving right now.
Well, we have a lot of. I mean, I can't go into too much detail on all of them, but the interesting thing is, Ren Money has committed itself to be very data driven, right? So decisioning is part of a lot of its business, right? We obviously spend a lot of our time with credit risk because that's where a lot of the revenue comes from. But we also support the business in the collection strategies, also support the business with analytics around finance, analytics around marketing. So, we do try our best to put data at the forefront of pretty much every decision we make. We've strengthened our business intelligence team. So a lot more teams are really demanding dashboards with regular updates to see what's happening in our marketing funnels, see what's happening in our repayments and collections approach. So it's literally becoming a business where we're just using data to do everything, which is great fun. But I can't go in more detail than that, unfortunately. It's been great because it's not always you find companies that are open up to say, do you know what, I actually would rather see what the numbers tell me before I decide what to do next. And adding that into an existing business to become its approach to most problems has been quite interesting to watch that transition. And I would say we're not obviously as where we want to be, but we've definitely made huge progress and strides in that. And it's always encouraging to see new teams coming with more requests for data, for dashboards, analytics to kind of help them with what they plan to do next, particularly during this period of uncertainty.
So there's a lot of opportunity for more students and bigger teams, I guess. A lot of
absolutely.
work.
Absolutely. There's literally there isn't. I mean, I can't think of in my mind where we couldn't do with more people. Definitely. We haven't really not recruiting as aggressively as we were before for obvious reasons, but there's plenty to do, and decision science can be applied to a lot of aspects of the business. And so we're looking forward to being able to open up and bring in more talent and apply them to more problems within the business and the industry.
I like that outlook.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that we agree on, that companies throughout the continent are becoming more and more reliant on data. And unfortunately, not every company knows what to do with all of the data. But when we strengthen the ecosystem, when we strengthen the talent that we have coming into these companies, that's going to have such an impact going forward. And that's definitely one of the drivers for the Gradient Boost, seeing that whole ecosystem grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of businesses, from my experience so far, have data. I know they have data. I know they want to leverage it, but just don't know how. And some of them start by kind of hiring, data analyst there, business intelligence person there, but haven't yet really made that leap of faith, right? And I think as the ecosystem becomes more mature, and I guess also training at the top, right? Because a lot of our discussion now has been really those coming into the industry, those wanting to sort of work in the mid-level jobs, but there has to be a certain level of education as well on the top, right? So C-suite executives, so senior management, to really find out what data science can do for them, and really find out how they can leverage that technology for their business, because it can be applied pretty much everywhere. And what I'm finding now is only businesses that really have the revenue are the ones taking that chance in this market. Ones really trying to see what data can do for them. And my expectation is that as time goes on and as there's more evidence of output and performance by those inclusions, more businesses will follow suit. But of course, when the market is full of talent, that becomes easier to apply to one's team. That becomes easier to grow the economy, grow the industry within data science. And before you know it, every business has at least a small data science team. But that's sort of going through that natural process, right? Financial services seems to be the most prevalent because there's obviously a clear need and there's a clear process or the clear influence the decision science, data science team can have. But before you know it, though, it can apply to other industries, manufacturing, retail, logistics. There's so many places that the decision science that hasn't really been fully leveraged in our country, but we will eventually fall into that process as well.
Cool. I think we're all on the same page. Got to grow that data, grow that ecosystem.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Dumebi, for taking your time to speak to us. We're definitely going to be looking at what you're doing over at Ren Money, and I think anyone listening can feel nice to know that they no longer have to sit there and do the work that you did up front. That data science is becoming more accessible. And there are now growing ways that they can get into it. And, it's a great field to get into. Anyone else have anything to say to close out?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to, understand what your advice would be for any young aspiring data scientist that's trying to get to the position where you're in, where you're winning arguments in the boardroom based on data and stuff like that.
So I'll definitely recommend you. I mean, from what I've seen, a lot of young people are doing the right things, getting all those Coursera courses, trying to find jobs that really leverages the data science talents, doing sort of Zindy and Kaggle competitions. Definitely recommend getting a mentor, someone in the industry, in a fairly senior position that can kind of give you advice and guidance on sort of what you need to do to develop. find ways to kind of develop those soft skills, which I guess can come from the job, but also from mentorship, where you understand how the process works for different industries, understand that certain elements of the job can be very grueling, can be very painstaking, particularly the data preparation, data acquisition, data exploration, but also understanding that that in itself is where the reward comes from, being able to, have the foresight to know what part of the data to dig into, and then get the reward of seeing that transitioning to a predictive model, an analytical model that gives some value. That can be very time consuming and difficult to do, but with the right mentorship and guidance, being able to see that and be able to apply that. And of course, as one gets into their career and gets more senior, to understand that it's also important to give back, to try to encourage a team of aspiring data scientists, do sessions like this, being able to share your influence and experience to find out how they can also get themselves into those levels. And of course, and then being able to communicate with C-suite, with senior members of the team, to translate all of that technical elements of the work and being able to translate that into actionable business. Because sometimes it can be very challenging to work on something yourself, something very technical and very deep, and being able to then easily translate that to a business, another business individual who then needs to understand it to be able to apply that to the business. So I think that's kind of the next big leap, really, being able to interpret technical work to a team who is non-technical, so they can then be on board and work out how they can leverage that for their own business. So it's definitely a development process, not an easy one, but definitely a rewarding one. And the good news is that now is the time, right? Because my suspicion is that Nigeria, or my feeling anyway, Nigeria is kind of growing in that awareness, and that ecosystem is growing slowly. And it's when it's at this level or at this maturity that you want to get in, because then those jobs open up, and then your ability to see companies grow and influence growth within data science, decision science is available. So don't give up, be persistent, keep those courses going, try to find mentors, try to find opportunities to learn more. And then from there, try to pass that on to those who are junior to you, and then try also to be able to communicate effectively to leaders so they can take advantage of the skills and experience that you have.
Yeah, I really like the communication part. I mean, as technical and as very like all the heavy lifting that's involved. At the end of the day, they'll have to transfer and translate that information to someone that may or may not understand it, so that they can make an informed decision. So I think that's the bit that's quite important. If we can communicate effectively, and you've got so much power to sort of drive positive decisions and positive outcomes. So yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, it's very difficult to do, very, very difficult, because there's a lot of misunderstanding on what data science is. A lot of misunderstanding. I've literally had experiences myself where literally people think it's magic. They think that you can talk to the machine and tell it to do things. And having to break that down back to reality, and trying to have to explain that we're actually very, very far away from true artificial intelligence. There is still a level of teaching a machine something quite manual to automate. But then also showing them that this is still a better approach than what's being done currently, and it's not perfect. Obviously, there's no machine learning system that's 100% accurate, right? But that 80-90% accuracy that's given you can be leveraged for automation, for quick results, for better output, for better decisioning. You know what I mean? So being able to translate that can be very challenging. But I think that's pretty much where that's kind of where the magic also happens, because then that leads into implementation, right? And that leads into apps and products that people can use every day.
Positive investment. Yeah,
absolutely.
Thanks.
Awesome. As a final question, we spoke a few times over the last week or so, I think, and you showed some interest in the gradient boost in general, like in particular. Sorry. So what intrigued you with the gradient boost?
Oh yeah, so I was very impressed with what I saw, and I'm very impressed with the ambition and the dream. I personally also think that you get a lot from these Udemy, Coursera courses and so forth. I keep mentioning them, but they don't. It's not a complete picture. Yeah, you still need sort of a formal structure. You do need a lot of guidance and someone to talk to, either a mentor, a teacher, someone that can actually help you through not just the technical work, but also the soft skills, because that's really where a lot of people lose out on, just being able to understand how to apply this in a real working environment. And what Great Inboost offers that, right? And I think that's great, being able to and what would be really, really good, as especially obviously wearing the Ren Money hat and looking at what's in the market, being able to have a program that encourages that as well as the technical skills, as well as technical development, but also offering the ability to have someone that understands the process, understands how they can apply their skills into a business. Being able to go to a place where you can get people who have completed courses from that is great, because it's easier to then find talent. Because what tends to happen is when you need talent, you need a lot very quickly, and having to go through a massive search for the right talent can be very difficult. But knowing that you can go somewhere where, you know, some of those soft skills are also covered, will very, very encouraging. It also makes that process much easier. What's happening now is that businesses like Ren Money are trying to find ways to sort of sift through the talent, with their own methods, which can be very time-consuming and difficult, and sometimes very unsuccessful. But knowing that there's a course that covers a lot of those skills is great. And I think what I like about Great Inboost as well is you also take feedback from companies, take feedback from industry, and try to apply that to some of the courses you're doing, which I think is great. You can't really do that with Coursera and Udemy. It just teaches you what you need to learn, but doesn't really teach you everything else that we're experiencing, particularly in this market, right? Because obviously what happened in the African market may not necessarily be what's happening in other markets. So I like the focus on the African market. I like the development process, particularly with the soft skills, particularly with the mentorship, and also the opportunity for someone to come out of that process as complete as one can be for the job.
Awesome. I really like the first thing you said when you opened or introduced yourself or like walked us through your journey, you met your mentor, Richard, right? And I think the Great Inboost, it provides, it's a great platform, even though it's digital online. I mean, people aren't necessarily in the same room, but it offers you the opportunity to have a partner or have a mentor that's going to guide you and walk you through the process. And that again, it increases the probability of success so much. So yeah,
Absolutely.
That's really cool. That really resonates.
Absolutely. There's definitely a lingo that you can't get until you talk to someone in the industry. There's definitely a mindset that, you lose out on when you're not really talking to a data scientist working in industry, particularly someone who leads a team, particularly someone who has the work experience. So yeah, that's really important. I can't stress that enough. So it's great to know that this Great Inboost course does offer that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else from anyone? All right. Thank you so much, Dumebi.
No problem. It was a pleasure. Thanks, guys.
We have more questions, but no one would keep listening if we were here for another 2 hours. So we're gonna save everybody in. But we'd love to have you back on some other time. We can definitely love to continue.
Really enjoyed that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Talking to you. Cheers,
Thanks.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.
Okay, thanks a lot.